Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Those of you that are returning, thank you guys so much for being here. Those of you that are new, come on in. Glad you could make it. All right, so there's a few things that I wanted to point out in this video, and there's a few things that I want to discuss. Now, it has been stated since day one that Chris was not home at all in the time that Sebastian went missing. As a matter of fact, they both say that Chris left in the beginning of February. Chris says February 1st. Katie says the beginning of February. Sebastian goes missing on the night of the 25th, was reported missing on February 26th. So, in that whole time period, according to both Chris and Katie, Chris had not been home whatsoever, right? That's been the story. Now, this interview was done 9 months ago. Chris literally admits on here that he was home the night that Sebastian disappears, and he says that with his own, on his own. He admits to being home that night. Now we're going to get into that, but right before we get into that, there's a couple other things that I want to point out that don't paint the best picture of these two particular individuals. All right. So let's look at this. Now, again, this interview was done 9 months ago. It is from Smileystorey's World. I will link it down in the description below so you can go and watch the full interview if you have not already seen it. But there's a lot of interesting things that get brought up and pointed out in this particular interview. So here's the first one. Let's listen.
Do you feel like that he was ever a burden at all on you or your relationship, either one of you?
Was my steps
Now, she asks, do you was Sebastian ever a burden to you or on y'all's relationship? Nobody, first of all, it's dead silent. Nobody says anything for a few seconds. And then Chris speaks up and says, was my stepson a burden to me? Well, his mother, notably, while his mother sits there and says nothing. Was Sebastian ever a burden to y'all or a burden to your relationship? And the mother says nothing. To me, that speaks volumes. I don't care what anybody else says. I'm not here to make friends. I am here to point things out that just are not right. So let's hear that again.
to me? Now, it sounds crazy, but I promise you, you try it with your kids, man, your kids will be like, oh my God, they ain't kidding. It works amazing.
That was the end conversation where he was talking about how Sebastian was supposed to clean his room. And Chris says, is your room clean? And Sebastian says yes. And then Chris goes in and checks his room, and his room is not clean. So Chris grabs a trash bag and decides to clean his room by picking everything up that's on the floor, putting it in the trash bag, and then literally making Sebastian go and throw out his own stuff. But anyway, that's not even the most important thing on here. So let's get back into this.
Do you feel like that he was ever a burden at all on you or your relationship, either one of you?
Was my stepson a burden in my marriage?
Yeah.
No.
No. She does not say no until after he says no. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what mother wouldn't have immediately jumped on that and been like, absolutely not. My son is not a burden. But again,
No.
Um,
The burden, so what has always been a struggle, and anybody who's married and has, you're a step parent, okay, that struggle of
That's
being
a
able
struggle
to,
itself.
yes, very much. And then you've got discipline on top of it, and what you can do, what you can't do, with because you've got the other parent and this parent. That's always a struggle.
So it seems that no, he says no, it wasn't a struggle, or he's not a burden. But what was the problem was the discipline and me having to deal with this parent and me not being able to discipline him the way I want. Okay, now moving along, I just wanted to play that clip because I think it shouts volumes that, first of all, both of them were silent for a few seconds, and his mother never said a freaking word when asked if Sebastian was a burden. Okay, now moving on. Okay, so here's the next very interesting thing that happened in this interview. So there has been talk of CPS cases, and Chris goes and he says what he says here. Let's take a listen. And again, this is at 1:07:03 in this interview.
But I don't want softball questions. People wanted to ask me the hard questions. By golly, let's get these hard questions out. Sorry, but I just.
Well, let me start. Okay. Have you ever had CPS called on you before?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And you don't have to go into it elaborate or anything like that. I just, that was the question that I had. And that happens, sometimes, especially when you have a child who is, has special needs and stuff. That's hard.
I'll be honest with you. I've had CPS called on me in 2 states, New Mexico and Tennessee.
And and did that include with Sebastian?
Tennessee was Sebastian. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, here you'll hear him say that he only had this one call. The one in Tennessee is about Sebastian. Okay. But if you listen, and I'm gonna replay it for you, okay? He literally admits to there being 3 calls with Sebastian in Tennessee. 3. Okay. Now we'll get into that, but just pay attention.
In fact, Sebastian here, like I said, I got nothing to hide. So Sebastian went to school one day because we were at the house. He got in trouble. He didn't have a belt on. I was like, "Where's your belt?" And got it. Whack.
Okay. So he says, we're at home one day, and I said to Sebastian, "Where's your belt?" And he goes, "I ain't got it." He goes, whack. So he literally, okay, first of all, Sebastian not having a belt on was reason enough for this man, the stepfather, to whack him with a belt. He admits it, right? He says, "I whacked him with the belt," right? "Where's your belt?" "I don't have it." Whack. Just for not wearing a belt. Now listen.
I got him. So he goes to school and he tells the teacher. They're mandatory reporters. So the teacher reports it.
Okay, now here's where he really slips up, and he tells you about he mentions a previous CPS call. Just listen.
That afternoon, CPS shows up to the house while we're actually sitting down to eat dinner. Now, mind you, 15-year-old child.
Okay, right here. He says that he was 15. Sebastian was 15 when this happened with the belt. He whacked him with a belt for not having a belt on. He just said, we sat down to eat dinner. CPS shows up. Now you've got a 15-year-old kid who's mad and upset because he's being punished, right? So this recently happened, this belt issue. But yet, when Chris was over on Nancy Grace, he said that he whacked Sebastian one and only time with a belt on his bottom on top of his clothes. He said it was 3 years ago. And it's the one and only time he ever hit Sebastian with a belt. Now here he's admitting to hitting him with the belt. just this past year, because he admits Sebastian was 15 when he whacked him with the belt and this CPS order happened. Now listen to this.
He's not real happy because he's in trouble, so he's being punished.
So let me back up just a hair so we can hear it all together.
Year-old child, he's like I said, I got nothing to hide. So Sebastian went to school one day because we were at the house. He got in trouble. He didn't have a belt on. I was like, "Where's your belt?" And got it. Whack. Kind of got him. So he goes to school and he tells the teacher. They're mandatory reporters, so the teacher reports it.
Mhm.
That afternoon, CPS shows up to the house while we're actually sitting down to eat dinner. Now, mind you, 15-year-old child, he's not real happy because he's in trouble, so he's being punished. So he shows, he makes a report. They come to the house, and the lady who comes to the house is the same lady we've had. She's had a.
Okay. You see where he slipped up there? He says, the lady that came, so we're sitting down to eat dinner. They come knocking on the door, and the lady that shows up is the same lady that we had. And then he stops himself. And then he just says, she had a case before. So this same woman that is at the door right now when Sebastian is 15, the CPS woman, has been called before to his home because it's the same lady from a previous CPS call. He just admitted that.
Year-old child, he's not real happy because he's in trouble, so he's being punished. So he shows, he makes a report. They come to the house, and the lady who comes to the house is the same lady we've had. She's had a.
Is the same lady we had. She had a case before.
Didn't even happen. And like I said, I got nothing to hide. So Sebastian went to school one day because we were at the house. He got in trouble. He didn't have a belt on. I was like, "Where's your belt?" And got it. Whack. Kind of got him. So he goes to school and he tells the teacher. They're mandatory reporters, so the teacher reports it.
Mhm.
That afternoon, CPS shows up to the house while we're actually sitting down to eat dinner. Now, mind you, 15-year-old child, he's not real happy because he's in trouble, so he's being punished. So he shows, he makes a report. They come to the house, and the lady who comes to the house is the same lady we've had. She's had a case before.
Is the same lady. She's had a case before. And now he's going to tell you about this case before. And listen to the words that he says. I'm going to let you hear it for yourself, but he says, the case that was before is something that didn't even happen. It was like 3 stories shoved into one. When they finally got it debunked, which I thought was a weird choice of words. When they finally got it debunked, he got so mixed up in telling one story, it mixed into 3 and caused a commotion. They canceled that out. Now listen.
Now, the case that was before.
The case that was before. A minute ago, you just lied and said this was the only time. And now he's having to tell what happened right before because he slipped up with his big fat mouth.
Was something that didn't even happen, and it's like 3 stories that were shoved into one. When they finally,
And if you listen to that, that's interesting. So the case before is something that didn't even happen. It was 3 stories shoved into one. And he is talking about Sebastian. When he says he got so mixed up in telling one story that it mixed into 3 and caused a commotion.
finally got it debunked, they were like, "Oh, he He got so mixed up in telling one story, it mixed into three and it caused a commotion. Well, they canceled that out.
Now listen to what happens when he says this.
So the one on me, she shows up and I said, "Hey, how you doing? It's her."
Do you see how now that's how narcissistic some people are. This lady shows up, and do you see how quick his tone changed? Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. She's like, "Oh, hey." She goes, "Hey, I'm already don't." She's like, "Don't tell me anything, but I'm gonna tell you what I know happened." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Blah blah blah." She told me exactly what happened. I said, "Yes, ma'am."
Now this is when the lady was telling him that he's talking about right now. When CPS came, because Sebastian reported that Chris hit him with a belt, and this is okay. So this is the time we're talking about. This is this past year, before Sebastian went missing, because Sebastian was 15 years old when this took place.
She goes, "Oh my God." I said, "Yes, ma'am. This is how it's been." Sebastian thought by telling on me, making it sound like I was so horrible.
See how that happened? So he goes on to say, Sebastian thought by telling on me that I was so horrible. And then all of a sudden his mic cuts out. So you almost wonder if, maybe Katie or someone didn't pull that plug out real quick, because he was about to, it doesn't sound right what he's about to say. Sebastian thought by telling on me that I was so horrible. What? Now listen to how his tune changes once he comes right back on.
Oh, you cut out. You cut out just a minute. You cut out. I can. Oh, there you are. Okay.
That I was going to get in trouble over something stupid. And I was like, "No, Sebastian, you got punished, man. You got punished." And he was like, but, and I was like, "You got punished." And the lady took him outside.
Now here's the worst part. He says the lady took him outside, and says, "Listen, you can't. I'll just play it, and then we'll talk about it."
Sebastian, just because you get in trouble and you get punished, you need to understand when you go and you say things about people and you lie and you fabricate things and you.
Well, wait a minute. What did he lie and fabricate? Because you said you hit Sebastian with a belt. He went to school. He told them he got hit with a belt. They called CPS. CPS shows up, tells you about what she heard happened. You say, "Yes, ma'am." You admit to hitting him with the belt. So what did he lie about? And what did he fabricate? It seems that Chris is telling this like, well, this lady was like, "Oh, you can't lie. You can't fabricate things." Do you know that by making a false report like this, you could get in trouble? Like pointing the finger at Sebastian and trying to scare him into never calling CPS again for whatever reason. Yeah, kind of like that.
You make it sound worse than what it is, sir, you can get in trouble for that. So that happened. And the lady was like, "I am so sorry." And I said, "No, he's just a child. He's upset. It is what it is. I'm okay with it."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So he's already been caught in a few lies at this point. He's already put his foot in his mouth a few times during this interview. So now let's move on. Now, I did want to mention this real quick. So at one point in here, the woman asked, "Does anyone have a life insurance policy on Sebastian, or an insurance policy on Sebastian. And it goes quiet. Neither Chris or Katie, nobody says anything for what seems like a long time. But then all of a sudden, Katie speaks up and says his father has one on him. So I did find that a little bit interesting. But one thing I will say about Katie during this whole entire thing is Chris says, and it says whatever he wants to say and puts whatever he wants to put out there, and says that he's done this to Sebastian, thrown his stuff away, hit him with the belt. And she sits there with her mouth shut and never says a freaking word. And I just sit here thinking, like, why are you not fighting for your son? It's so extremely frustrating to me. And then when Smileystorey's World asked if Sebastian was a burden on them or their relationship, and Katie again sits there and says absolutely nothing. That should tell the entire world anything we need to know. Okay. Now, let's get to this. Let's get to this main part right here. Okay, now I want to talk about this section of the interview right here. So I got one more part before we get that. It's coming up though. It's all intertwined. Okay. So we got where they are talking about Sebastian, walking out of the house. So when Katie got up that day, all the doors in the house were locked. Right. So they say that they believe Sebastian walked out the front door without his shoes on, walked out the front door. Now, you got an autistic child, okay, an autistic teen who is even high functioning, who is so upset and so distraught over whatever that they are deciding to run away. That they're so distraught and upset that they need to run away so badly that they forget to put their shoes on, but that they remember to walk out the door, turn around, punch the code in, and make sure the door is locked before he takes off. Is that what they're going with? Okay, now listen to this.
Okay. Oh, man. I don't know.
And not only that, but if somebody had been by the front door, punched in the code, believe it or not, no, it's not super clear, but you would have seen a shadow or a figure.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Based on, something would have been visible because one of the lights is still visible from that ring.
The only light, according to Katie and Chris, in the interview that they did with Nancy, the only outside lights that were on that night were their garage lights. And they are nowhere near the front door.
Ring camera from across the street.
Yeah.
That has been, like I said, every video, and I've said this through Facebook, everything in the neighborhood. I couldn't talk to you enough positive about my neighborhood because.
Okay. Anyway, let's get to the point. It's up here. Okay. Now this part's very important. So pay attention.
Asking is, how did you know that he went specifically out the front door? What made you think that?
We presume that he left out the front door. We never know 100%, obviously, but we presume based off of process of elimination, going over it with law enforcement, going over the house, where things are, how things are, Sebastian's routine, And the fact that that's the door that he always uses or prefers to use, because I won't say 100% of the time he does come in with me through another door, but that's the door Sebastian prominently uses. That's the one that if he were going to sneak out of the house or leave the house for whatever reason, that's the most reasonable door that he would have left out of. Any of the others would have made noise or not
or would
been.
not have been locked.
Mhm.
Okay, listen.
So
Because
the back door would not lock.
from the outside, like the front, no. You'd have to have the key.
So I'm not going to describe every door lock in our house to
No, I
y'all
understand
personally. That's a safety thing.
Yeah, I
But-
understand that. Don't do that.
Yeah, but what I can say is
Okay, now listen.
there's only 2 doors in the house that he could have gone out where he could have locked
From the
on his
outside.
own or from the outside. And the one he wouldn't have gone out because of how much noise it makes.
Okay, now pay attention.
Yeah.
Everybody would have, and plus it would have been seen on camera. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Now, did you hear that?
Thing.
Yeah, I
But-
understand that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
He was about to say everyone would have heard it. Now listen, it gets better. Everyone. But Katie was supposed to be the only one home that night, right?
But what I can say is there's only 2 doors in the house that he could have gone out where he could have locked
From the outside.
on his own or from the outside. And the one he wouldn't have gone out because of how much noise it makes.
Yeah.
Everybody would have, and plus it would.
Yeah. The one he wouldn't have gone out of because of how much noise it makes. Everybody would have. He was going to say, well, heard it. Everyone would have heard it.
Have been seen on camera. Let's put it.
Plus, he would have been seen on camera. Let's put it that way. So the door that he is referring to right now is not the front door because they believe he went out. They believe he went out the front door. He wouldn't have gone out this one because it makes so much noise and it would have woke everyone up in the house. Plus, he would have been on camera. Let's put it that way. Interesting.
That way.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it would have been seen on camera. So by suspicion or reasonable elimination of all these doors, it's.
You mastered
Oh,
your
come on.
mind.
Front door.
Okay. And there's no, and so,
Okay, now listen. This is when Chris admits to being home that night. He almost slipped up a second ago when he said or everybody would have heard, and then it cuts out. He changes it.
and there was no windows unlocked or anything like that y'all can tell or could tell. I'm sure they looked at all that.
Yeah, with
Yes,
the
yeah.
screens intact and things like that.
Yeah, nothing exterior of the building of our house has been altered.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why it was like, not only that, but for him
Okay, listen.
to go out the window, so to speak, he would have landed in the flower bed and, barefooted. Yeah, we'd have heard something.
There you go. Right from the horse's mouth himself. If he'd have gone out the window, he'd have landed in the flower bed. Barefooted? Yeah, we'd have heard something. We would have heard something. He just admitted to being there that night.
Door.
Okay. And there's no, and there was no windows unlocked or anything like that y'all can tell or could tell. I'm sure they looked at all that.
Yeah, with
Yes,
the screens intact and things like that.
Yeah, nothing exterior of the building of our house has been altered.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why it was like, oh, not only that, but for him to go out the window, so to speak, he would have landed in the flower bed and, barefooted. Yeah, we'd have heard something because he had landed on it and screamed.
We'd have heard something because he would have landed on it and screamed. Now, you wouldn't say that. You would say, if you were not home that night, you would have said if he would have went out the window, his mother would have heard him because he'd have screamed. But no, he says we'd have heard him because he would have screamed. We, meaning we, more than one. We, you and me. I mean, what more? What more does anyone need? So those are the few things that I wanted to point out in this video. I'm not even all the way through this interview yet, so I'm sure there will be more videos to come. But, I don't know. You got people, you got these guys screaming, oh, poor me. Look what everybody's doing. They're attacking me, blah, blah, blah. It's things like this when parents lie and manipulate situations and fabricate stories that people start asking questions, that people start questioning your integrity or your role in the whole thing. It's exactly things like this. So let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. I love you guys. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe. Keep asking those hard questions. Keep spreading that light. And I will see you all next time.